There were some questions, there were two different questions about bass guitar. I know you've talked about this on the Discord. We've had some good discussions on there. I feel like live bass guitar is always the toughest instrument to mix because nobody knows how to play live bass guitar except for really good bass players, at least coming from like punk rock world where it's just like the bass player, as I was several times in bands, like the
Yeah.
third best guitar player. And therefore you just play like a everything's just a
Playing root
mess. And
notes.
yeah, attacks are different, low end's different. Do you have strategies on live bass guitar that you can share? I know you've talked about it a little on the Discord, but I just
Yeah, I mean, do your best. I mean, bass is hard, right? You know, it's
it's
like
so hard.
there's a lot of like even when you get a perfectly played bass guitar from a super seasoned professional, like you still have to deal with the sonics of the bass, which is like kind of sitting in that weird zone between drums, guitars, keys, and it's kind of stepping on everything, right? So it's just tough, and it's so arrangement specific. Is someone down low on the neck? Are they playing up? Is the bass meant to be this real kind of melodic presence? Are they playing it like a melodic instrument, or is it just foundational? So kind of going in, listening to the bass, be like, okay, this is just some homie trucking root notes, and like it sounds like a fucking bass guitar plugged in DI. Like I'm not going to feature that in the mix. I'm just going to get it to be the foundation of the song that it needs to be. And so, but normally it's like with bass, it needs a lot of compression. That's one of the few instruments that's like pretty much always going to get compressed for me. Um, it's not something that I think you can get away with like just distorting or just saturating. Like you unless you're going to go through and spend the time and do clip gain, which I think you could do. I've never done that. I've never gone through and like clip gained every note so it's like exactly the same volume and all that stuff. I've clip gained groups of things so they hit compressors a certain way, but I think compression is your friend in this. Like it's the same with like a lead vocal. Like there's kind of two things that are always going to have compression, and those are it: bass guitar and vocal. Um,
I like what you said too about always important to think about a bass guitar uh, not as an instrument that functions one way in a song. There are bass guitars that act as Paul McCartney melodic, James
yeah,
Jamerson melodic, really important melodic elements. Sometimes they hold down subby low end. Sometimes I've actually in some of the stuff I've been making with this one kind of hyper pop leaning artist, the bass guitar is uh, functions for the low end in the verse, and then there's 808s that come in the chorus, and I high pass it, and it becomes almost like the sound of another guitar, but because it's a
yeah.
single note, it sticks in that kind of upper mid range and then into like the telephone 2 to 3K range where it just has like an extra little crunchiness, but I literally has no low end. So I have to listen to when I'm listening from verse to chorus. Sometimes I'll listen to the drums and the bass so that when the chorus comes in and the low end from this instrument from the main bass goes away and the 808s supplement it, like how do those blend? Bass guitar can be like kind of like we've talked about with guitar in the past. Guitar is an instrument that almost can function like a sample now. Like all these things can exist in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, and modern production has made it harder. Like I had to mix a record a week or two ago, and it was just like 808s, drum set, bass, and high jangly guitar, and that was like the arrangement. So like dealing with like subby low end kick drum and 808 as like the low end foundation, trying to shoehorn in a bass guitar that's in the same register. Like a lot of this is arrangement stuff, right? And if
Yeah,
you get the arrangement right, and if you kind of minimize those factors, then like you probably don't have to do a whole lot. Like, you listen to those old Motown records and like it's like one drum mic, one bass mic, one guitar mic, and like everything is just in its perfect place. And I don't think they were thinking about compression or any of that shit. It was just like, well, there's the bass. You can hear
yeah.
it.
They were just good at us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I may have told the story on the live. I definitely talked about it on the Discord a little bit and shared the one email exchange. But on the Keith Urban song I did a few years ago, he had Pino Palladino play bass on it. He's just like, I want some live bass. I'm gonna have Pino do it. And Pino sent me this track. It was a fairly simple part, but I literally pulled the stem into the session and without even adjusting the volume, it was perfect. It just sat perfectly. The EQ was perfect. The compression was just right. And so, of course, I immediately hit him up and said, thank you so much. This sounds amazing. It's perfect. Just out of curiosity, what was your chain? Thinking I'm going to get something magical. And he goes, P bass into my Apollo.
Yeah. And
like,
he's just listening, and he's playing the right notes, and
yeah,
he's probably like playing a certain, like that's just, Pino's a G for sure.
Yeah, Pino's
Yeah.
maybe the best alive.
But also, it kind of speaks to a different point, right? Where it's like now modern music production, a lot of people are wearing a lot of hats, right? Or a few people are wearing a lot of hats, and I think it harkens back to this era of like Pino Palladino is a fucking bass player, and he's a great one, and there's a reason he gets hired. And a lot of times, like, you can't afford Pino, you can't afford to hire the best drummer, but man, the value when you get someone who comes into the studio who is just focused on their instrument. I've been doing stuff with Annie lately, and her drummer Mark Juliana is just like a total beast of a drummer, like one of the best drummers I've ever worked with. A real, like, the drum set is an instrument for him, and you can give him effects and all of that stuff. And when you just have someone that has a command over their instrument like that, down to the tone of the particular drums, or whether it's bass or guitar player comes in, they've got their effects sorted, they've got their amps sorted. Like, when they're like self-sufficient like that, and they can kind of make decisions for you as they're performing, there's a real magic to that. That's just few and far between these days, because records are just made differently, and so that's the real magic. So like with that Pino moment, it's like, man, that's the dream. Just get a mono bass file from Pino, and it's just like at Unity, and you're good.
It was ridiculous.
Thanks for watching. Just a reminder, all of this content is free. There's no secret knowledge here. There's no Patreon. We don't read ads. We don't have sponsors. We're just trying to build a knowledge base. All that we ask in return is that you share it with somebody. Thanks so much.